Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a very special guest with us today. One of the most diverse 8-ball players in the world across multiple cue sports. He's been a world champion under world rules, a world champion under black ball rules, an Ultimate Pro Series winner under international rules, and now having a crack at Hayball. He's been a runner-up Heyball world champion and winner of the recent Heyball International Open Australia stop. That's a long name in Melbourne that we've been covering recently. Welcome to the show, Jack Whelan.
Thank you very much.
We had a couple of chats.
Yeah.
It was towards the end, and I think the last 16 matches were just played or something.
Yeah.
And I'd only said hello to you on about day 3 or something, and I thought,
Yeah.
oh, it's coming to an end. I'll just have a little bit of a chat with him while he's still here. You were sitting low down on a couch, and I come walking up. Just a bit of a chat, just talking about your funny little situation with Alec. And that was all fine. And then he's walked off and I've walked off, and I've realized that my belt buckle was completely undone, and I had half my belt was out and my belt buckle was there. And I thought, and I've walked like right up to your head and you were sitting down low. I'm thinking, oh, Jesus Christ. There
You're
we
lucky
go.
I didn't clock that then.
Oh, good.
Otherwise, you might have been in trouble.
So imagine sitting down low and then someone walks up to you and is talking at that height. Yeah, that was a good one.
Good on you. What a great way to introduce yourself to someone.
Yeah, bloody idiot. I was so embarrassed. I thought, oh, God, he had to see that. My crutch basically walked up to his face,
Good to have you with us, mate. And congratulations on the win in Melbourne. It's been great for us to have a big Hayball event locally and be able to get down and see it firsthand. So congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
How does that event stack up in the Heyball calendar for you? We're still learning what International Open means and the Masters events and the different series that they have. How does this kind of stack up on the Heyball calendar for you?
So basically, to run down what you've just said there, the calendar's really divided into 3 sections. So there's the Chinese events, which is the Division 1 and the Super Tours. So there's 5 of them per year. And then there's the Grand Finals, which is normally in March, which is the big one, the $700,000, the winner one. Then there's the WPA stuff, which is just started in the previous 12 months, really. And that's all to basically tick boxes to get into the Olympics in 32. So Mr. Chow, obviously the director and owner of Joy Billiards, is having to put on tournaments to tick boxes, basically. Asian Open, which is now why I'm in Jordan. Oceania event, which was in Sydney. And basically there's a European Open, which was like 3 weeks ago. And it's basically, like I say, it's all just to tick boxes to have a European champion, an Oceania champion, an Asian champion, and so on. And then there's the stops, there's 5 of them also a year. So there's Melbourne, which is the first time. Last year, I think it was in Sydney. I think there was one in Gosford last year because there was a Champion of Champions, and then they put another one onto the back of it, I think. And there's one in Thailand, there's one in Malaysia, all around Asia, really. And there's 5 of them also. So as it ranks in stature, it's not as big as you'd think. But obviously, like I said in the interview after the tournament, like any event really at the races you're playing, it's like the snooker format of race to 4s. It's sort of a little bit of a lottery, really, compared to the longer races in China where you play race to 13 every round. When you win one of them events, you really have won it. Whereas like a 37, you're playing in like a field where there's 50, 60 good players that can beat you 37. Whereas if you played race to 13, that 50, 60 players probably goes down to like 8 to 10. And obviously over the longer distance, the better player, especially at the game, like you say, obviously you play English 8-ball. So first to 7 in English 8-ball would like flipping a coin. First to 7 in Hayball is probably like playing a race to 13 at English pool. But playing a race to 13 is like playing a race to 30 at English pool, where the better player would tend to get on top over 2 or 3 hours of playing.
Especially with that winner breaks format.
Well, that's only just been introduced in the last 6 months, really. I don't know why they've introduced it. All I do know is it was a templated rack first. Obviously, all the balls are guaranteed to be touching. Now they've gone to a triangle and winner break. So obviously it's harder to make balls, but they've made it a winner break format.
So you've obviously played in other Hayball events around the world. How does Melbourne actually stack up? Obviously, this is all our first time as well. I didn't play it this time, Mark did. But how did this one sort of stack up compared to the others? Could we do something a little bit better down here to maybe make it better, or was it good, or like
No,
what was your
I played
take
in
on it?
I played in a few. I played in Vietnam, played in Thailand, and I played in Malaysia stops. And I actually preferred the Melbourne stop over all of them. The Vietnam one was okay. It was in a venue in a sports hall, so like there was no lights above the tables, and it was a little bit like the Malaysia one was okay. The Thailand one was also in a club. That was pretty good, but I think the conditions of the one we just played out there at ZZ Billiards, or however you pronounce it, double Z, that's as close to the standard of you're going to get in China, really.
Yeah.
I think it was really good, to be fair. Even the silver leg tables played as good as the gold tournament leg tables would play. And some of the terms when you're playing clubs, they don't reflock the tables straight away, so they're a little bit slower. The rails get a bit pingy, and then obviously the bags tighten up a little bit because the rails aren't as slippy as they should be. Whereas I think them tables there were just perfect.
Yeah, that venue in Melbourne that you played at, that's the playing conditions set up for a pool hall in Melbourne in particular is exceptional. I think the player conditions were great. It's a little bit tight for spectators to be able to get in and out and watch frames.
If you was to close your eyes and walk into a pool club in China, you wouldn't think you was in Melbourne. That's exactly how they look in China. Everything from the little sausage machine behind the desk, everything about the whole venue is exactly the same as it would be in China. The seats, how they have them sofas with a divide in the middle, that's all Chinese.
Yeah, that was excellent. And I loved that the seats were raised a little bit so you got a view over the table when you were sitting there.
Yeah.
And the scores were excellent. You could see from a distance if someone you knew was playing, you could see the scores going on. So that was excellent.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to do a bit of a rundown of the path to the final that you had in Melbourne, because a lot of these players are familiar to these guys and to the locals. A couple of internationals that I didn't know. So first round was a quick victory, Zhen Yucheng, 6-1.
Yeah.
You come up against Jake McCartney in the second round, and obviously he's just come off the win in the Oceania. So it's a tough second match in the first stage. But got up on that one 7-5. In stage 2, Sula Cheng 7-1. Then Toby Clack. So Toby's the son of Paul Clack, who's an Australian pool playing legend.
Yeah, I know him from obviously playing on the Ultimate in the UK. So,
Robbo, you did a quick interview with Toby, and I think he said, "Yeah, I lost the first round, and then Jack ran a rack, something like that."
Yeah, he said the first two frames were good and close, like 1-1, and that's actually when I left. And I said, then I looked up the scores, and you lost 7-1. He said, Jack just ran. Toby said he had a chance to win the third frame and mucked it up, and then you made a good clearance, and then you ran a few racks in a row. And all I could say there was, against guys like Jack, you gotta win those, put him under the pump. So when he gets the opportunities, he's behind on the scoreboard. Jack's obviously very professional, but not immune to pressure.
of course.
You let guys like Jack here, have the run of the table and just going to free roll you and just destroy you. So you gotta, any little scrap of a chance, you have to take him early. Same as Mick when he was down here. He wasn't immune to pressure, but if you don't show him at the very start of the match that you're there to play and beat him.
It's like the very first round, the guy that I played against, he was a Chinese student. And when I come up to him the table, he come up and shook me hand. He goes, "Pleasure to play you, and I'm a big fan, and watch you in China." And I just thought, well, you
can't win.
Really, you can't win then, can you? Not in the best, but in the best possible sense of he was that happy just to play that I just thought, well, it doesn't really matter what I do.
So you feel really comfortable now, something I would do, if I was going to play you and you hadn't seen me play before, I would, if I see you coming up, I'm actually going to line up a long, hard ball and I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Bang it
crunch
in.
it
Yeah.
when you're watching. And if I miss it,
Yeah.
I miss it, whatever. But if I crunch that ball in right in front of you,
Yeah. To know
you're
that
sort of
you're there to
just,
play.
and then if I run a good rack at the start, you're sort of like, oh, hang on, whoa, he's here to play.
Yeah.
Like you said, you have to be that way.
I think a tip for any of those guys that are like might look up to you in a way, keep it till after the match, walk up, shake your hand, and be prepared to play, like, try and beat you. And then after that, then they can tell you how much they love you, because it doesn't matter after that. But if they do it, before the match, you just know that it's basically just a practice match now. So
When Mick Hill was down here the second time, I played him in our biggest tournament down here, and he flogged me in the final. And then 2 years later, Mick and I got a coaching session off him, and Mick and I basically spent 2 years practicing. Oh, that's Mick, yeah. 2 years practicing what he told us, and I'd improved a lot. So he's down here the next time, and we're all around this one table about to start, and he's knocking all these balls or whatever, and I was in very good form, and I started knocking them all as well. And he said, oh, what about the white ball? Can you do this? And I did that. And it got a little bit like an ego thing come up. And I thought, oh, here's my little chance to put him on the spot here. Now, I gave him a bit of a lose-lose scenario, and I knew I was, but I thought I'd do it. I said, $100 a shot, let's go. Whatever shot you set up, I'll do. And then whatever I should, go like that. Now, he would beat me, but I put him on the spot to the point where if I do get him, it spreads around the room very quickly, goes on social media or whatever. And so, of course, he said no, because it's just a no-win scenario for him. But that was my way of saying, I'm coming to get you this year, and I played him in the final. He beat me 11-9. It was a really good match. So I still lost, but that was my way of trying to, no fear.
Stamp your authority on it.
Yeah. I still lost though.
Now, last match in stage 2 was one of the local favourites, Steve Jamison. Bit of a jokester. Did you get to have a chat with Jamo as well, Jack?
A little bit after the match, yeah. Obviously, could tell he played snooker stroke pool by his action over an American pool. He said that was the worst he played out of all the matches so far.
He would say that.
No,
Well,
you could tell he generally there was, not that he was bothered about playing, but he was just, he just ran loose a few too many times.
I was watching.
Yeah, he just missed a couple of balls that he wouldn't normally miss. The first time I ever seen him play was the round before, and he had a shootout with the woman player from America. What's her name? April, I think.
April, yeah. That was a good shootout.
Maybe 10-9 or not 10-9, 5-4 or 6-5 or something like that. Because I was on the next table to him, about to start, and they just kept on potting it. I was thinking, let me get my cues out and start.
Yeah.
And they just kept on potting it. And in the end, she missed, I think it was the 5th or 6th one, and he potted the next one to win. But yeah, that's the first time I seen him, and obviously we played the next morning.
They missed their first 2, and then they both knocked in 4 in a row each. Very hard, especially under that pressure. And then she finally missed, and then Jamo's knocked in his fifth in a row. So that was a good shootout.
I didn't see the 2 misses. I just seen them potting them all.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It used to be a lot more difficult though, the shootout, because it was half again from the spot back to the rail. But it was more of a lucky shot than, not a lucky shot, but it's that thin that you.
It was almost like trying to cut the black in off the black spot almost.
Yeah, with the cue ball on the blue spot, for example.
Yeah.
See, but you go as thin as you can and hope it goes in. The amount of times
coming off. Okay.
It was just
normally it's higher up.
Yeah, it was just a bit. I think what they've done, although you're going to get a lot more shootouts that go 8-7 or 10-9, I think you can miss the ball, but you still have to pot it. Whereas before, you could win with 1. Yeah. Whereas now, you're not going to win with 1. You have to pot at least 3, I'd say.
Yeah. Certainly as a viewer, we chatted last week on this podcast about the timed matches, which means that you need a mechanism like the shootout to decide and when it goes there. As a viewer, I find it excellent because you know when you're going to sit down, you can see which match you want to play. You can sit down at the time, you can watch it. And there's a sense of excitement when they get close and time runs out and you get that shootout. And in the venue, the crowds will gather around as well to watch
Yeah.
these things. So it's quite
Well,
exciting as a viewer.
Well, actually, in China now, they've stopped doing the clock. So we don't have a match clock anymore. They just play race to 13. If it takes as long as it takes, sort of thing. So the shootout doesn't actually come into play no more in China. It's only outside of China where the reason why we're playing race to sevens is obviously because of the Olympics. So when it gets into the Olympics, it's going to be race to 7, 100 minutes, and that is it. With the stop events, because they're not like official WPA events, that's why they go 7, 9, 11, 13. Whereas like the Oceania event, to be fair, for example, was race to 7 from round 1 to loser's side all the way to the final. It's all race to 7, which is good. But when you get deeper in the event, you want to be going longer races, really. But it's just that's the rules of even the World Championships is race to 7 in the final.
Or the ones in November back in Brisbane.
Yeah. Same as the champions there.
I think from the last 16 onwards at this tournament, they should have removed the match timer because you pretty much know the schedule now anyway. And because I noticed what was happening was as the races increased, the timer didn't increase enough to match it. So I was telling Marty and Mick here that yours and Justin's finals race to 13. You may as well have made it race to 100. It didn't matter because the timer of the match was always going to dictate the score.
Yeah. The thing with like, do you know when you've got an open game though, the time, like, do you know in China when it used to be timed, you'd hardly ever run out. It'd always be finished before. Well, I don't know whether it was because you was racking with a template and the balls were getting more open and you was having like 7, 8 finishes each, that was speeding the game along. Obviously in China as well, they stop the clock in between racks, which they don't do abroad, which is crazy really, because like, say for example, when I won the frame to go 11-8 up, there's 7 minutes to go, and I know she's got to rack the ball twice for at least 2 minutes. So there's only 4 minutes to go. And then for you to clear up both frames in 4 minutes is like, if I get one more visit to the table in the next 2 racks, I know I can take away 1.5 minutes and you're done. Whereas like, I prefer it to be no clock because I'd rather get beat than time out someone. Like I hate,
It's
at the end of the day,
unsatisfying.
at the end of the day, you've got to play to win. And I get that we knew from like 30 minutes out, there was a crazy one. I think I was 9-5 up with like 20 minutes to go. And he snookered himself on his last ball and he jumped it and made the ball in middle, which he should make it anyway. But I'm sitting there at 9-5 thinking if this is it now, because if you don't jump this and make it, I go 5 in front and you can't possibly win in 20 minutes with 5 because she's got to rack the balls 5 times.
I found that when I was playing Kurt in the last 16, so I think it was race to 9, I was like 5-2. We had a couple of slow frames. Anyway, he's 5-2 up, and I've looked and I've seen that there was like 20 minutes left on the timer. And I'm like, oh shit. And I looked at a situation that was, I probably would have preferred to have played safe, but I'm like, I got to win 4 frames in 20 minutes here, and that's including racking the balls. I'm going to have to run all these racks in a row. So I couldn't actually play safe anymore. Because if I played a negative safety, he would have played a negative safety. Boof, there's another 1.5 minutes off the clock.
Well, it's probably more because like he waits till it gets to 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Then hits it, and you're then trying to sprint to the table to be. It's just a mess,
exactly.
Really. I think they should definitely stop the clock after every rack.
Yes,
because that then, for example, we played 20 frames in the final. If you take them 20 minutes that she took to rack the balls, and obviously the Chinese ref's the most efficient ref, really, over all the refs, in getting the ball tight, especially that add 20 minutes on, and all of a sudden it's 11-9 with 20 minutes to go. 2 frames is nothing in 20 minutes.
I just found the timer was, it really killed a lot of matches. Like there's very rarely do you get a chance for a match to actually go down to the decider. Like when I was watching you guys play, a few mistakes here and there, but there was a lot of outs made. You both were getting on with it. There was not many negative safeties, as in you both were playing aggressive safeties to put the other guy under pressure. It was very good. I enjoyed the match. But it was never going to come down to someone getting to 13. If someone got to 13, it was going to be like 13-8, and
it was going to be a quick finish by one of us.
So this match was always going to end by the timer running out. And I just found it really unsatisfying to both watch and play. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think towards the end, maybe from the last 16 or the quarters onwards, the schedule, it's a lot easier now. There's not 200 players to worry about. I just think remove the timer and let
I totally
players
agree
play them
with
out.
that.
Or extend the timer. So you can have the timer there, but just have it there as a thing to just make sure things don't go crazy.
Yeah.
But if you looked at a percentage of, I'm not sure, but probably from the last 16 onwards, how many matches actually finished compared to ran out on the
Yeah.
timer?
Yeah.
Too many
Well,
ran out.
in your last 16, Jack, so you beat Alec first off
Yeah.
9-3, so that's gone the distance,
Yeah.
but obviously by a reasonable margin. Jason Theron, so this match is finished on time. You've won at 8-7, and the clock has stopped that match.
I had no right winning that match, to be honest. That was like, when as a player, when you get away with one in a tournament and you end up go on to win the tournament. That was the round that I got away with murder, really. I wasn't miles behind. I was always like 2 racks behind the whole match. And every time I got to within 1, I could never get a go to get level again. It was always back to 2. And then he missed a bad ball. I think it was 6-4. And I got out 6-5. Then I broke and ran for 6-all. And then I just felt like it was mine to lose then rather than his to win.
You've got
And
momentum.
massively. And then like the balls come out and he was like all his balls on the rails, mine were in the open. So I was like, he was pushing the safeties, but he couldn't never really do anything to me. It was always like, he was chasing the rack and I was always like, well, you're going to give me a chance in a minute. And then at 7-all, we had a really bad frame where we both tried to lose it, really. And I managed to nick it with 6 minutes to go. And I broke and made a ball and I just basically shut up shop. I took my extension off on open rack. Then I played a pass a turn on open table. So there was like a spot over the top, over the green bag and a stripe next to it. So I've doubled the stripe onto the side rail, potted the ball over the bag, so left the cue ball over the pocket, and he couldn't do anything. He's had to take a bang. Then I've had another shot, another 45 seconds. So basically, I just ran the clock out for 6 minutes, basically.
That was similar to mine and Jake's match.
Yeah.
Over here, we had a series called the Pro Series, and we were new to the timers and everything. And for the first couple of events, like when it was race to 6s, and I think maybe an hour shot clock or something. And we quickly learnt when you're 5-3 up race to 6 and there's only 4 minutes on the clock, you're trying to win. Of course, you want to end the match, but you can also win by just getting to the table, potting 5 balls slowly, and then just win.
Yeah.
And we got criticized. Like whoever did that got slaughtered on social media for it.
Really?
Yeah, even though all other sports do it. AFL, they start playing kick to kick, and basketball, all the same thing. And then towards the end of it, it just become acceptable, And
I think
I had
like in the UK that was the case, but that it would be classed as like a skill to be able to, like I'd feel, because obviously I've played under a lot of shot clocks now, that my management of time, I can, whereas some people were like, when they're at the table, they'll panic, whereas I sort of feel like I know what's happening around me. I know if I pop them 3 balls there, that's 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
You mean, whereas a lot of players will go, bang, hit it before the refs even said 10, when you can hit it when it's on 2 because you can't miss it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the extra 5 seconds while the cue balls. I remember once I played in the Ultimate Pro Series, and I played James Croxon. He was flying back at me. I was well in front. I think I was maybe 4 or 5 racks in front at one point. He's come back to within 1. I've got to the table in the final seconds, and I can't really do anything with I've got 1 ball left, and I've got like 30 seconds on the clock, and I hit it as hard as I could with as much side as I could. Right, and the cue ball was just rotating, and everyone's like, he's come to the table to play the shot, and the cue ball's just spinning on the spot, and the crowd are looking at him like, hit it. And I was just standing there. I was laughing at him because he couldn't even hit the ball. And in the end, I actually ran the clock out with the cue ball spinning on the spot. He couldn't actually, like, he's come to the table thinking, right, I've got a chance. And when he realised what I'd done,
so you could actually do that in the Hayball as well, I guess, because with those cues and those big balls, and if you could make a clearance, instead of making it in 3 minutes, you could probably make it in 7 or 8 minutes by actually making it spin. That'd be pretty crazy.
But the problem is, obviously, like,
that'd have to be easy.
If you pot in a ball with side, obviously it can be missed at Chinese, can't it? Hayball, sorry, not Chinese, but whereas the English pool, if a ball's over the pocket, you can't possibly miss it, which is obviously a good thing, but it's also a bad thing as well because it's a lot more easier than the Chinese pool is.
I reckon, Marty, one day we should go back and Robbo was playing with Bowen. It was a money
A
match.
money
You and
match.
Rob Bowen, I think against Tem and
Oh God. Oh, that was brutal.
I said earlier that you'd won under a whole bunch of different rule sets, Jack. One of those was you were the team's world champion for England, and you played with Tem in that team.
Really? I remember him from Leicester.
Yeah.
But I can't remember the tournament, 2010. I can only really remember back from about 2015. Can't remember back any more than that.
Tem's living down here now, has for quite a while. He's one of our top
Yeah.
players. He's very, very, very good player. He could have, I don't know why he didn't play in the Hayball. Maybe he hasn't played it before, but
Yeah,
even if he hadn't.
I actually remember when he left. I remember when he left to go to Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, he could have
Like
done
I
some
say,
damage in it.
Year, I don't know when it was, but I do remember it now.
Must have been 10 years ago or something.
yeah, he's one of
Oh, it's
Australia's
way more
best.
than that. Got to be way more than
Or way
that.
more. Okay.
I bet it won 4 off that 2010 mark. Got to be 15 years maybe that he's been there.
Has he been here that long?
We've been putting up with him for a long time. Shout out to Tem if you're watching. Hi, Tem.
Yeah. God, you've been here that long. 15 years, really?
Yeah.
It's chaos here sometimes, Jack. I want to ask you a couple of questions about the final, but let me just so in the semi-finals you've played Jack McCartney and beat him again 11-4. That's a very solid win against one of our top players.
Yeah.
You must have played well in that match.
Yeah, like from the off, I think I broke and ran the first 2 racks, and then I broke dry the 3rd rack, and I remember he went into a ball and he actually stuck on it. So I cleared up again. Then I think I broke and ran the next rack again. So he had like 1 visit to the table and he was 4-0 down. I sort of always had like I always had the best set really. The whole match, it was just, he was trying to push his way into it. And obviously he's a great player. But sometimes the balls dictate what you can and you can't do at this game. Like you say, at English pool, you can often play like a crazy double or something like that. Whereas at the Hayball, it's difficult to make an out that's not really there.
Mm.
And I think that when you're always on the wrong set, he's got his balls on the rails and he's trying to double them or down the rails. It can be missed. And when you're behind, especially when the pressure's on, you're trying to make something happen that can't really happen.
I was saying that to Mick because Mick hasn't really played it. And I was saying the thing I noticed was compared to the English game on the 7-footers where you can pull off lots of recoveries and screwing off rails and double this and triple that and whatever, all this. I hardly noticed, I didn't really see much of a recovery at all. Quite often there was a story building up and you could tell when someone was or was not going to make an out, you know, and if it was getting from bad to worse, very rarely did they recover and make the out. Most of the 9 out of 10 times it just ended exactly how you thought it would.
I found like with like the Hayball, especially over playing it for the last couple of years properly anyway, is when you've got a ball that's not very nice. At English pool, you just get on with it and you either double it or whatever. But at the Hayball, you tend to see the player build up to that ball on the rail that they don't really want to take. They're trying to avoid it at all costs till they get to it and then they miss it. And it's just like, I was on that 4 shots ago. Why didn't I play it then?
Yeah, because it's hard.
Whereas, they just don't want to. It's like the black down the back. It's like the red down the back rail in it at snooker. Try and avoid it till the frame ball or till the frame's won. If you don't land on it right, you stun it round the table and leave the cue ball behind the black. It's just that sort of shot.
Yeah.
But it's one of them. Like I think you've got to play the game how it should be played, and that's what I've found over the last 2 years, especially. And when you move to the next level, is you've got to play like it's English pool, even though it's not. You've got to attack the balls like it is, because if you don't, the game will just swallow you up. And I find like people that don't play it all the time would see that ball on the rail and think, "Oh, that's tight down there. That doesn't go. It'll go in. You've got to pot it."
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was saying to Mick that I went in with a strategy of playing very conservative because I'd only played it for a few hours and because it's difficult and all that sort of stuff. And the more safeties I played, like refusing all the 50-50s and everything, the more I found I got negative. And then when it time to come to pull the trigger to win the frame, I had convinced myself that everything was so difficult that I was missing. And then so when I decided to actually take on the 50-50s and test my skill and see what I could actually do, I wasn't making all of them, but my pot success, my white ball control, my
would be
confidence,
more than the 50-50.
everything went up. And I also noticed, and this is a bit of an amateur thing, but I noticed that when, at least at the standard we're playing over here for now, it'll increase. But when I was making a mistake and I'd have 1 or 2 balls left, I was often getting back to the table and able to actually play a safety or two and actually put my other guy under pressure. Whereas on the 7-footers, if I'm playing someone like Mick and if I get down to 1 ball left and miss, I'm never winning without some miracle. But I found that on the Chinese 8 balls, the game's hard enough that even when you've got 6 balls and they're kind of out in the open, that it can still be mucked up.
I think though, like when you've played the game at like a proper level, like obviously you have, you'll understand the surrounding of what's happening in the game. With this game, it's like snooker, for example. You get in first and you make your 50. That's no good because there's still 67 left. And at that top level, there could be one point difference, but they'll still clear up to win by a point. Whereas at English pool, it's like you do or you die. At this game, it's like, well, do you know if you played the game where you don't lose the frame, you're still in the frame. And like I practice a lot with Gareth, obviously in the UK, and the amount of times where he'll get to his final ball, not that he'd miss a lot, obviously, but if he wasn't, I'd snooker him, and he wouldn't whack the ball out of a snooker. He'd push it to the pocket and make you have to. And then, like you say, that when you've got to go and clear up, you have to clear up then.
Yeah, exactly. All of a sudden, you're actually under the pump.
You're not hanging yourself in a rack. Like there was one frame that I played against Jace in the second round, and I queued up to the black, and it was like down the side rail, but it's like more times I pot it than not. And I queued up to stun it, and as I pulled the cue back, I thought, no, I dragged that. So I dragged it and I hung the 8 over the pocket. And I thought, well, if he clears up, he has to clear up. But he had a ball on the back rail that he had to pot, and he had to get onto the black side of it to pot it into the other corner. And he actually did clear up, and I thought, that serves you right for not playing the black properly. But I played it in a way where if I missed the 8, I'd lost the rack. If I put the 8 over the pocket, I was still massive favourite to win the rack, even though I missed the black. Whereas at English pool, you'd be gone straight away.
Yeah. When you get up to a high enough level at the English pool, like 9 out of 10 pots are guaranteed, and 9 out of 10 positional shots are guaranteed. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Now, let me just quickly ask you about the final against Justin, Jack. So you got out to a 4-frame lead a couple of times. You led 4-0. I actually thought Justin looked a bit out of sorts in the first few frames, so you got out to an early lead.
But just touching back on the previous one there we spoke about, the first rack, obviously I got to my last ball, then I got to the 8, and I just felt like, obviously Justin's a good player and he's played all around the world. I just felt like, not that he didn't fancy it, but the way he played the first rack gave me like 2 racks. I thought, why isn't he attacking me there? Like, and he tried to play another safety, then another safe, and then all of a sudden, I managed to jump the black, but obviously it was an easy jump, but I jumped the black in. And I just thought, you've had like 5 visits there, and you've never once tried to win the rack. You've tried to like defend the rack. But he had like 6 on 1 and 6 on the black. And it was like, why would you not try? I'd rather go down swinging than give someone the rack. And obviously, it's one of them where the more times you give someone a chance at the table, they are going to get the black hanging over the bag or something where they put the pressure on you. But I just felt like the shots that he was playing, I didn't feel like he was confident enough to clear the balls up in that first rack. And obviously, a lot of times, early doors in a match is where you can sort of stamp your authority on the match. And although I didn't put the match to bed, me getting the lead, I never got pegged back to level, even though I felt like terrible halfway through the match because I thought he was going to get me.
Yeah, I distinctly remember watching and thinking something's wrong with Justin. Like he looked negative at the table,
Yeah,
in those
but that's
first couple of
just like
frames.
what I said. I don't know whether it was nerves. It's probably a bigger match for him being at home than it was for me. I always felt like I know you don't really want to say it in person, but I always felt like I was the favourite to win, especially a race to 13. At the end of the day, you're playing pool, aren't you? Anything crazy can happen. The amount of times you've lost to people you shouldn't have, or you beat people you should have, it's a mad game. And I just felt like that second frame sort of told me a story that I think that he was thinking it was a bigger match than what I was.
Yeah, well, at when you were 5-1 up, you broke and went dry, and Justin's cleared up, and then he's broken, run the rack. He's 1-2 on the and suddenly his spirits were better. He was kind of in the match fighting at that point, but you still got out to a 7-3 lead, 4 frames. You got out to a 9-5 lead.
Yeah, I had a
the-
dry break at 9-5, and he cleared. No, that's when he jumped. He jumped the last ball at 9. He snookered himself on an easy finish, really, and jumped it and made it. And I actually thought, like, when he jumped the ball, he jumped it, potted it, but when the cue ball hit the rail, it should have screwed, and the cue balls landed on the rail, which meant it topped off the rail, which put him on the black. If you to watch the shot at 9-5, when he's jumped the ball, obviously when you jump it, it's screwing back into it. So when it hit the rail, more times it will skid off the rail, and it checked back for him to pop the 8. The rail slowed the cue ball down, like it sort of landed on the rail.
If there was ever a time he needed to pull off a good jump shot, it's now. It's about 2 ball space between cue ball and black ball. Should have enough time to get the cue ball down. Yeah, brilliant. That is a brilliant jump shot when he needed it the most.
Yeah, that's it. But when he jumps it and makes it, you'll see the cue ball checks straight back. Whereas when you jump, that should come down towards the ball on the on the pink spot. It's sort of like pitches, and then like the spin changes. Whereas that should come down the table more. That should, and obviously then he'd have to double the 8 rather than.
You still got to knock in that black though.
Of course, yeah.
That black is very missile on TV and all that. It looks like I just drop it in, but it's a 1/3 ball blind pocket.
The amount of shots that you see, and especially like, because obviously I've been to the snooker many times. Do you know when a ball's like 2 inches off the rail on a snooker table? Obviously, it can be missed. Clearly.
Mhm.
When you watch it on TV and the guy's right behind the pocket, you think, how have you missed that?
Yeah.
But even like the bulk line's 2 foot from the pocket. If a ball's on the bulk line, it can easily be missed. But when you put it in person, you think, like, he's not favourite to pot that. But when you watch it on TV and the guy's like 6 inches behind the pocket, you think, well, how have you ever missed that ball? Especially like them balls down the black rail when they zoom right in behind the pocket.
Yeah.
Think, how
Everything
can you
looks
even miss
easy
that?
on the phone.
What? That's it. And that's the thing with like the Chinese over the English is you don't actually, obviously the table's not a huge difference, but it is 2 foot longer and a foot wider. People don't understand how big the table is until they see it in person. Same as like a snooker table. They could look at a table on the TV and go, he's just knocked in 100 there. He's had 1,000 centuries in his career. How's he done that? If you go to the club and you probably not make like a 30 break, 20 break.
Mm-hmm. You quickly reminded how hard snooker is. Absolutely.
Oh, man. Like you play obviously on a Chinese table, and the snooker players come to China now and play on the Chinese table. Like Williams and Selt and Bingham and Andrew Padgett, he's doing all right. And you can tell that when they turn up, it's just like we're playing pool.
Yeah.
But then when they play a pool player, it's like flipping out like that. That was all right. Like he can actually play a little bit rather than, because obviously there's like a stigma about that snooker players are like the far superior cue sportsmen. And I totally agree. The skill level is extremely high. But at the end of the day, we're not playing snooker. We're playing it pool. I played Graham Dott in the Masters in February, and he was 5-4 up at the interval. And I remember going out to the toilet, and I actually cracked my tip halfway through the match, and I've had that tip on for 5 years. So I didn't know what to do. I miscued on a long shot, and it took probably a 4mm gouge out of it. And I hold my cue the opposite way round. So, you know how you have like the arrows facing down? I hold it where the chamfer's in my palm. So I hold the cue upside down if there is a way. And I have nothing on the shaft. So like, it looks like a maple cue when I look down my cue. So if you ever see a photo of me and you look down the cue as I'm playing, it'll look like it's a maple, but obviously it's an ash, but flip it the other way around. So if I go to a cue maker, I'd turn the cue upside down and see if there's any marks on the cue that way. Same at English pool. I don't know why I've done it, but I've always had that. That's my sort of little weird thing. But I remember playing back to the Graham dot. I remember going to the toilet, you know, like a 10-minute break. I was thinking, like, I'm just hanging myself in racks here and just giving him frames. I'm just going to start playing pool now. So I went from breaking from the middle to breaking from the side. So the balls went a bit more messy. Then he's going for finishes that are not there, he's breaking down, and I'm just mopping the racks up. And after he basically just said, look, that was like what you did there in the second session was we played pool then. We didn't play like a clearing up tournament, we played pool.
Yeah.
And I ended up beating him like 13-7 from 5-4 down. But when you're playing like the snooker guys, if the balls are there, obviously they clear them up. But when you're playing tactically, they don't sort of see them passer turns or the little nudging shots where I'm going to get one of my balls out, but the cue ball's going to knock one of your balls on the rail at the same time. Because obviously they're just used to going red, black, red, black, red, blue, red, black, red, black. So they don't really see. Whereas you see like a Selby, for example,
snooker players.
they're just locked away in a club, aren't they? And just stun them blacks in off the spots. Just keep on doing that.
That's what I was going to say about when I was watching Hayball. You could clearly tell the people that don't play 8-ball that much in the way their pattern play is actually out on the 8-ball table, the Hayball table.
Yeah.
And I was saying to Mark that I can clearly see that this person is basically just sort of making it up as they go, and then they're playing a proper 8-ball player, and they're just making them look, you know, not great out there. You know, and like you said, if the balls are there, they can mock them up. But if things go tactically, or you know, more times than not, like 8-ball players are going to map an 8-ball table quite well. But you know, a person that doesn't play 8-ball much,
we tend to like sort of play the bad, like the hard shot as quick as you can.
Yeah.
So you know, if you're hanging yourself, you're not losing the rack from it, or you'll play it in a way where if I play that now and I do miss it, you've still got a lot of work to do rather than just snookering the life out of me. And making me give you the rack, basically. But I think, like, you know, when you see people like, I know obviously Neil's had a go in Yushan at the Star event. I actually played in that event. He actually slept in on the event I played in and missed the match.
Not surprising.
He played a guy from an English 8-ball player called Scott Gillespie. You'd probably know him. And I was on the same session, and like I'm sitting there thinking, why isn't he playing over there? When I come out, he was playing. He played Neil, and he didn't go up. Slept through his alarm. That was at the Star World Championships in, I think it was maybe 16 or 17. It's when Mick lost in the final to Ching, maybe. Yeah, I think it was that one. So 2017 Star World Championships. That's when a lot of the snooker players come. Like, I think Barry Hawkins maybe played. Joe Perry played because he was decent as well. He played. He was good. Ding played. Obviously, he was with Star, but I think he just turned up and got beat and just left straight away, basically. But yeah, there was a few snooker players. Selby went to the next year, lost to Appleton in the final. Obviously, Mark's played a lot, and he would be. I think if you looked at like the snooker guys who would compete the best, I think it would be Mark.
Yeah.
Just because of obviously his 8-ball background.
Who would you fancy? So like a random snooker player who's on the tour right now, who's never played the Chinese 8-ball before, and one of the equivalent of 8-ball professionals over in England who hasn't played any Chinese 8-ball before, and they were to play a race to 11. Who would you back?
Yeah.
So an equivalent from each sport.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Like, I probably back the snooker player at the back end of the rankings. At the higher end of the rankings, I'd back the pool player. And that would sound weird, but if you got like 32 in the world at snooker, which I'm not sure who it is, but 32 in the world at English 8-ball, because it's not in that much depth, I think they would bully them, and it would be like a I'm playing him sort of scenario rather than actually playing the table. Because obviously snooker's a superior cue sport to 8-ball. I think the top 32 player in the world, for example, if you were to say like Matt Sell, I know he's slightly higher than that, but he can play Chinese pool. And if you played him at like the top 32 pool player, he would beat them every single day. Whereas if you got the top 8 guy, for example, like Murphy, for example, and you put him against a top 8 pool player, I think the pool player would take control because they'd be switched on enough to tactically outmove the player over a race to 11. Not saying that the snooker player couldn't win, because if the balls were open, they'd clearly be more confident in knocking the balls in.
Yeah.
But where I feel the snooker players sort of overextend a little bit sometimes and take on a shot that's not really the right shot because they don't see that as a. That's what when I played dart, he was going for balls, and I think surely you can't go for that. But they just see it as like, well, that's a shot to nothing at snooker, that is.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not a shot to nothing in Chinese pool, because then I'm just going to tie you up and you can't jump. So you're going to have to kick off a cushion. The chance of you knocking the ball off a rail is slim to none. Whereas if I leave you straight, I played one guy in Brisbane. I played him first round. He was an Aussie guy, actually. I think he was Australian, or he's from your way. And when I played him, I seen he never had a jump cue. So third frame in, I've left him the easiest jump in the world. I've sat down. The guy next to me, Mickey Krause, he played Moscone Cup for Europe last year. He goes to me like, "What have you done?" And I just went like that and leant back. And he goes, "No jump cue." So I knew he couldn't jump the ball. But like a jump, you probably 90, I would probably make the ball like 97, 98 out of 100. But I knew he had to come off a rail, and he actually missed the whole ball. But because I knew he couldn't jump it, that's why I played the shot. And it'd be the same like the snooker guys. It's not that they don't want to learn, but obviously they got bigger things to do than learn how to jump and kick and break and Chinese pool.